Katana #1, written by Ann Nocenti, art by Alex Sanchez. Apparently from the pages of Justice League of America, but that book hasn't actually started yet as of this issue, so sure, we'll roll with it. So we open up with Katana. It looks like she's in Japan, but apparently this is San Francisco, and it's just a small part of San Francisco called Japantown, which, again, we'll get to. But she opens up that she's fighting someone named Coil, who is a master of the spiral sword. It looks like a ribbon in everything it's drawn, but apparently it's sharp. So either way, it starts binding her and starts like cutting into her. And the guy Coil, he then says, "Psh, you're so filled with anger and emotion, just like a woman. You should go back to the kitchen." I'm not even kidding. That is page 2. So at that point, Coil has pretty much taken her down and it's just like, yep, all that anger, welcome to Japantown, bitch. So then we open up to a few days prior where Katana is arriving in San Francisco. She is here looking for a girl named Shun so that she can see her body. And as she arrives in Japantown, Guy throws like some candy at her. Katana just catches it and throws it back at him. And he's like, oh, sorry, that was entirely by reflex. And he's like, psh, don't be so serious. Oh, humor's a much better weapon. And then she meets up with the lady she's trying to meet up with. Her name is Nori. And she's like, hey, sorry about the drunk guy outside. Are you here to rent the apartment? And she's like, yeah. By the way, it said that in the ad that it was discreet and with extra space. And she's like, well, yes, the main room is light, but the basement is pretty dark. And she's like, well, I prefer the dark. All in all, it's just her basically saying, hey, pay me extra, and I won't tell anybody you're here, which she does. So now Katana has a place to stay in a basement, and she sets up some, I don't even know how to call it, like, they're all pieces of plywood that she set up projectiles to fire out of, and she flips a switch with her foot, and all of a sudden these projectiles fire at her with paint tips on the end, so she can see if any of them hit her. And she swipes through almost all of them with her eyes closed, but a few of them hit her. And she's like, oof, all right, well, as the kids would say, epic fail. That is an exact quote. So that night she goes to bed and she has a dream/nightmare that she is having sex with her husband who is dead, but the husband then turns into Coil. And she's like, oh no, Coil is having sex with me. And she wakes up and she grabs her sword and says, please forgive me, my husband. It was a nightmare. I didn't mean it. You are the only one who's welcome in my bed. And then she proceeds to get dressed. And she says this whole thing about how housewives in Japan would purposely use everything in a kitchen to be able to fight off intruders, and how every aspect of her body armor, her necklace, her earrings, her everything is also a weapon that can be used. So she makes her way down into, I want to say downtown Japantown, but she specifically says it's only a few blocks. So I guess she just walks the next street over, and she meets up with a woman named Yoko, who is the keeper of Shun. And she's like, oh, nobody wants to see Shun. She's hideous. She's ugly. She's an untouchable. And Katana's like, okay, but I still want to see her. And he's like, all right, fine, whatever. So turns out she has to pay an inordinate amount to see different tattoos that Shun has all over her body. And this is apparently, I'm just going to read it here. Her great-grandfather was dying. His skin carried the story of the stealthy rise and mad decline of the ancient clans of Japan. Shun was a bad girl, and so she was taken on to have those stories transferred to her skin. So at that point, Katana says, I want to see the one about the katana. And turns out it's a story of a madman who had a sword named Soul Taker, the same sword that Katana has. And because he had Soul Taker, he also had blood madness, and he lost his mind trying to purify the clans of Japan. And at that point, Shun's like, hey, can you maybe get me out of here? And then the caretaker says, all right, that's enough, bye, get out. So at that point, Katana makes her way to a park where all the bushes are in the shape of cute little animals, and then she gets jumped by ninjas. And she uses her, like, earrings and her necklace and her hair chopstick things in order to fight down a bunch of the ninjas. And there are 13 of them. And she does a pretty good job, but then, wouldn't you know it, Coil shows up, and he starts using this thing. And then we get back to now, where Katana was bound up at the beginning. And apparently the sword squeezed so tight that, yes, it cut Katana up, but it pressed against her own sword, the Soul Taker, which is stronger, and therefore it cut through Coil's sword. And she pulls out Soul Taker, starts using it to chop through the ninjas, but it turns out that she's not even in control of her own actions. The sword is moving itself, and Coil's like, hey, is that sword moving itself? And she's like, no, I'm in control of it. And he's like, it looks like your hand is burning. And she's like, I can take it. And he's like, okay, well, here's the thing. You got a magic sword, and we in the Sword Clan can help you control it. Just join our clan. And she's like, I will never join you. You killed my husband. I can hold a burning sword. And he's like, all right, well, you're going to go probably crazy over that, but whatever. This sword will corrupt you. And she's like, I will be able to walk that road. I can do it. And so the issue ends with Coil saying, welcome to the tightrope. Okay. I like the art. The art is very different. Alex Sanchez has a very different style than I've seen in pretty much any other book in general from DC. I like it. And the Senti is writing. There are like 4 different things I had issues with. In just terms of like, it's just weird. Let's not forget the epic fail line. Let's not forget the kitchen line. Let's not forget the fact that her nightmare is her having sex with her mortal enemy. And, like, there's an odd fascination with not only Katana's naked form in this, but also Shun's. It feels weird. It feels like it's like written by a 1950s guy who has some very big issues with how women are written. But instead it's written by Ann Nocenti, and that, I don't think that makes it better. So, I don't know. I'm not saying it's a bad first issue. It's setting up a thing of, okay, you know, the sword and whatever else. But, like, the whole reason she said she came to this town was to see Shun's body. And I'm not quite sure, now that she got that, where are we going? You know? This first issue didn't do a good job of setting up what is the bigger plot. What is going on here? It seems like it's going to be a clan war sort of thing, but considering this is maybe 3 city blocks of San Francisco, it's going to be very limited in scope unless we build it up a lot bigger, a lot quicker. So, yeah, it's got some problems. Overall, I'd say it's like a 6. I still think it's a decent enough first issue. I'm willing to give it the benefit of some doubt. And again, the art, very interesting for the style that it's going for. But, that writing. Please figure out what you're doing and stop doing what you currently are.